Good morning, folks. The real Captain Kirk here, live from Weather Trends 360 studio here in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania. It is the 27th of January, Monday morning. Hard to believe, moving at warp speed here. Hang on to the end because we are going to talk about a lot of our 2020 outlook and what we see. We'll be talking about that tomorrow with our Wall Street clients. But again, give you some sneak peeks here at the end. Again, speaking of year-ahead forecast, this was our projection for winter, that it'd be above average in the east and maybe some below-average temperatures out in the Rocky Mountains. That hasn't entirely played out, but certainly been well above average in the eastern half of the country and across most of the country. But cool spots, if there are any, has been really the central Rocky Mountains, maybe a little bit of seasonal temperatures up there in the Dakotas, where it actually has been the coolest winter in 3 years up in the North Dakota with the near-average temperatures. So not doing too badly on that front. Again, snowfall was projected to be 18% below below average, actually 24% less than last year, and third least in 13 years nationally was our year-ahead snowfall projection. Right now we're trending at about 22% below average, so not doing too bad. 8% less than last year and fifth least in 13 years. So not been a snowy core winter here. Again, this is from the November time frame, so doing pretty well on that front. Again, I know we made a lot of folks kind of unhappy when we were talking below average snowfall and not so cold here in the eastern two-thirds of the country. Here locally, it's been a green winter. My wife is pretty happy about that. This is her garden in the backyard, so she's happy about that. I know snow lovers aren't happy because we've only had about 5.3 inches of snow here so far this winter. Again, one of the things we do with our statistical math-based approach is it just takes the human emotion out of the equation. Meteorologists by nature love cold and snow. So here locally, the projections were that we were going to have the coldest winter like 2013-14 and 68 inches of snow like 13-14, and that's just not happening. So again, the advantage of statistics and math and a completely automated approach to projecting temperature, rain, and snow by week, by mile, everywhere on Earth, is that we take out that human emotion. So again, not doing too badly here, again, with the Weather Trends year-ahead outlook. Looking at some factors that will play a role here for this spring is the Great Lakes ice coverage is the least in 3 years. This is one bellwether for why you can have a warm spring. 6% of the Great Lakes have some ice on it right now. That's anemically low. Last year was 24%, and 2 years ago 28%. If the sun doesn't have to spend its time warming and melting the ice in the spring, then it can do a good job on warming the land. So this is just one of many climate cycles that we look at, but certainly this will go up a bit here as we get into March. It usually peaks in March, but definitely going to be a below average ice season. The other thing this winter has just been this polar vortex has been very, very strong and symmetrical. Starting to see some wobble here, but with a very symmetrical polar vortex, you're going to have it very cold in Alaska and the North Pole and Greenland and Northeast Siberia, and that's where the cold's been. See some little tiny perturbations here of a polar vortex, but again, more toward Alaska. So they've been epically cold, coldest in decades. Northwest Canada's been cold. Siberia's been cold, Northeast Siberia and Greenland. So again, it's just some hint here, but not a ton of hope here for snow lovers. The other factors has been these dueling high-pressure systems, the Bermuda High in the Atlantic, and the blob, the green temperatures here, ocean temperatures, are slightly above average. And so that high is displaced north of Hawaii with cold water along the Alaska, Northwest Canada, U.S. West Coast. So with that cold water, you're just going to have a downstream trough from that high, and that's been parked over pretty much Alaska and Northwest Canada. So that's where the cold has been bottled up this year, and then the big Bermuda High just has not allowed the systems to, if they do get cold here, just not to last very long. The other thing we see here that will play a role in 2020 is more of a La Nina event, seeing signs of that all as we speak. So again, pretty big transitions happening in the Pacific. So these are just a couple of the many cycles that we look at to project year ahead. Looking at the 14-day outlook, not a lot of hope here. Again, there was some hype here about a storm here for Groundhog Day. It doesn't look like it's going to phase. So again, a big, huge maybe. Again, maybe more for Maine and Nova Scotia and up in Canada, but maybe not here locally in the tri-state area. So it looks like if the groundhog anything on Friday or Sunday actually is Groundhog Day, it looks like it's going to be mostly cloudy to cloudy. If that's the case, he won't see a shadow. If he doesn't see a shadow, he's not scared. If he's not scared, spring's near. So we'll see if that's what he projects here on Sunday. Looking at the this week overall, 27 January through 2 February, pretty epically warm, 10 degrees warmer than last year, 7th warmest in 35 years, so much above average nationally. Ironically, still cool in Florida. They had the frost and freezes that caused the iguanas to fall out of the trees, so they still got some slightly cooler temperatures here again this week, but nothing too terrible compared to what we had last week. Map inset left there, temps versus last year, again, just epic, much warmer across the northern two-thirds of the country here, so very, very warm compared to a year ago. Wetter than last year, near average national rainfall. Snowfall 51% less than last year. We'll run through some maps here, but snowfall looks pretty anemic this week. Snow cover here this morning is actually pretty low as well. 36% of us have snow on the ground, average about 40%. So again, just a tad below average here for snow cover here this morning. We'll run through a 6-day forecast maps here, but there's not much. A little system that goes maybe through the central U.S., Kansas, Oklahoma, a little bit of snow for them, and then fizzles as it heads east. And again, this system for the weekend, Groundhog Day weekend system that's probably been hyped a little bit too much. Looks like it's going to fizzle and just not bring any major snow for the East Coast. Run through these one more time. Again, just not much to talk about. With the Great Lakes wide open, if we do get some cold intrusion, you can get some lake effect snows. So with the ice coverage kind of non-existent, that still leaves the potential for some lake effect snow if we get a cold blast here, really getting out toward middle of February potential. This first week of Feb 3 through 9, 1.8 degrees warmer than last year, 6th warmest in 35 years. Southeast is more seasonable temperatures, but much cooler than last year for the southeast. The cold spot just versus average is going to be up in the upper plains, still warm in the east. This will change. Again, this is going to be toward the end of this period here, we will see some cold air returning to the east. So the 6th, 7th, 8th time frame for snow lovers is another system to watch. We'll see. Again, big maybe this far out there. Wetter than last year, above average nationally. Snowfall 59% more than last year, above average. So this could be a snowy week, again, for parts of the northern tier of the country and maybe the northeast as we get late in this period. We'll talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about here tomorrow with some of our Wall Street clients. Had some fun filming last week in the Big Apple. And again, to say we're bullish on 2020, we are. We see a lot of in-sync weather for our big retail clients, and so a lot of good news for 2020 for the most part. One of the things we like to talk about with our clients is just what happened in Q4. This is the 3 November through 1 Feb retail quarter. And again, so warmest in 3 years, above average temperatures, drier than last year. Least snow in 3 years is kind of what we project for the U.S. But we look at these trends all over the world to see how this would impact equities of different types. We then obviously like to recap some of the highlights. One of the highlights actually was Christmas. The week before Christmas was one of the cold spots, 7.1 degrees colder than last year, coldest in 3 years, below average temperatures nationally. That was a huge plus for seasonal merchandise sales. This was the projection for that week, 15 through 21 December before Christmas. It was a saving grace to at least get this good weather here. The other negative, however, was just the flu season. It peaked around Christmas and off the scale compared to last year. So again, that's a negative. People inside, homesick. Benefits online shopping, but kills brick and mortar sales. Again, we talk about that tomorrow. Then again, there's a lot of 24 cycles, a lot of math, a lot of statistics says we have a March spring season more like 12, 15, 16 as opposed to anything we've seen in the last 3 years, which have been very cold and snowy. So a lot of good news here for spring, even into the back to school season. Maybe a hiccup as we get in October, November time frame. We think it'd be a pretty warm fall. But again, the good news here with the warmer spring, drier spring, we think it's going to be dry like 18 across the country, warmest since 2012. So this is good for farmers that struggled so much last year with planting and the epic rain. We think that this is going to be a much better season for the farmers ahead here, March through May. So with that, folks, we hope you have a great week, and we will be back here this time next week.